Hey guys, I am so excited to be here tonight. We've got the very first guest for my series that I've been hosting on Instagram TV, which we've now taken live on these stories, called my Show Up, Speak Up series. So every week for the next couple of weeks, we'll be having a different guest speaker, an expert in the field of health, wellness, therapy and coaching to talk on a whole heap of different issues. So I'm really hoping that there'll be lots of little nuggets and a lot of topics and conversations that, we can really take some value from. So we're kicking off today. So I've got my very first guest speaker, who is the lovely Sarah. So Sarah is also called the binge eating therapist. And Sarah was a former binge eater, now has turned psychotherapist. Now she helps other people break free from the cycle of binge eating.
Hi,
Sarah.
you're right.
Yes, good. I'm so glad that worked. Tech is always an issue.
I know. So far, so good.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being a part of this and being the very first first guest speaker. So thank you. Really appreciate your time. Would you just start and tell people kind of a bit more about what you do and your story? Everyone has a story for why they do what you do. So yeah, it would be great to just hear a bit more about kind of your story and your past and what led you to doing what you do today. That'd be awesome.
Sure. Yeah. So, my eating problem started with binge eating disorder. There was a lot of binging and not much restriction in between. I know some people binge and restrict, but for me, it was binging and I gained a lot of weight very quickly with that. Then I became bulimic for quite a few years after that. And then I managed to kind of claw my way out of bulimia, but was still struggling with binge eating on and off for quite a few years afterwards. So I said, I've had like the full-blown eating disorder, and I know what the disordered eating's like as well. And I decided to become a therapist. It wasn't actually anything to do with food. I think I liked the idea of it. I went and did a counselling course at the local community college and decided to train to be a therapist. And I didn't know if I'd even be able to work with this subject, so I thought it might be a little bit too close to home. So to begin with, I thought maybe one day I would specialise. And then I did a placement at a private eating disorder clinic. I thought I'll give it a go. And I realised that, yeah, this was where my heart was. This was the stuff that I know, and it's the stuff that I just wanted to be working with. So from there, I gradually just kept niching down to pretty much just binge eating now. So that's how I've ended up here.
Oh, thank you for sharing. And yeah, that's kind of why I asked the question, because your story kind of resonated with me as well, because I suffered with bulimia too. And yeah, I went into this thinking, is it a bit too close, to home, and is this going to be too much? But exactly the same as you, like being through it puts you in such a good space, doesn't it? To be able to then help other people and having that real empathy and the connection and understanding, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a funny one as a therapist, because generally we're quite a secretive bunch, and the whole self-disclosure thing in a lot of circles is a real no-no. So right from the beginning, I was like quite happy for people to know that I'd struggled, but I was really cautious about how much of my story to share. And to be honest, Instagram has been a big part of that. You go back to my early post and I'll kind of allude to the fact that I've struggled with this, but I don't really go into it at all. And then just as time's gone on and I've become a bit more comfortable, and I think the positive feedback I get from people when I talk about my own experience is enormous. So it's been a gradual process for me, but I've become more and more comfortable about, I'm not going to sit in a client session and tell them my story when they're paying me, but I'm happy to kind of put it out there if people want to find out more about what I went through.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Yeah, it's the whole social media gives you that platform, doesn't it? Be able to express yourself. And half the time, a lot of people with food issues, it's such a secretive thing, isn't it? So people going through it themselves, you can kind of relate to that. Well, I could anyway, being able to just be really cautious about how much you share. And it's getting over that first hurdle, isn't it? And actually, once you start the process, it doesn't feel as bad as what you fear, right?
Yeah, and there's someone therapist called Jiggy's Place, and I spoke at an eating disorder summit with her, and I watched her talk, and she said that for her, she went to an eating disorder treatment center in America where all the staff there were recovered themselves. And she said that was just such an extraordinary and important part, I think, for her recovering. And that really reassured me that I think to talk about, it's not going to be for everyone. Some people don't want to know about their therapist, and that's important that people get the right kind of therapy for them. But that was reassuring, I think, that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's always good to get that good feedback, isn't it? So
Yeah.
obviously, given the time that we're in right now and the crisis, and you know, there's a lot of people struggling, obviously being in the UK is very different to over here. Is there anything that you're seeing constantly come up, or is there anything that you're facing with your clients or your audience that is, you know, one of the main problems people are going through right now? Is there anything that's kind of really sticks out?
There's a couple of things that I think are quite unique about this situation that's coming up a lot. I think some people have really learned to manage their eating anxiety with exercise. So that being limited, not being able to go and do their normal workouts at the gym or classes. I mean, we're allowed to go out and exercise once a day, but for some people, like the whole routine's been thrown out. So that's creating a huge amount of anxiety, and that loss of routine is really impacting then how people are eating and their struggle with that. And the other one is that for some people, like binge eating is such a way of like emotional regulation, and they're confined somewhere with family or with loved ones, and they don't have their space for that release. So there's this real panic of not being able to do it because there are people around. So I think those are the two things that I'm seeing the most at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, you know, it's that kind of feeling of being trapped, isn't it? You're at home, all sense of routine's gone out the window. You're constantly surrounded by food. Like I'm sitting right next to the kitchen, the boredom, the stress, all of that, you know, it's the emotion that's behind it, especially right now, isn't it? Anxiety, stress and boredom and loneliness as well. That's what I've been seeing actually.
Exactly. And in any kind of situation like this, like all your traits, I think, become amplified under stress. So if eating is already a problem, or you've already got this dynamic or unhealthy process, that can become just amplified when your stress levels are up.
Yeah, for sure. It's just in a constantly heightened, tense world right now, isn't it?
Yeah. And the uncertainty as well. Like we don't do very well with uncertainty as human beings in general. We like to know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So even for people who might feel, and a lot of guilt. Okay, so I mean, people who struggle with binge eating are consumed by guilt anyway. But then I've got the guilt that's layered on top of that is that other people in lockdown have got it worse than me, so I don't deserve to feel bad as I do. And people judge themselves for feeling bad. That's enormous.
Yeah, I actually saw a post that you did on that about feeling guilty, about struggling with food, and I thought that was quite an interesting point, because it's so true, and yet it's not very, you know, very much talked about.
Yeah, because even people that struggle with binge eating, they get into the trap where they think that the answer is to try harder.
Yeah.
And the problem with eating disorders, when you try harder, you end up like burrowing even deeper into the eating disorder.
Yeah, it's that willpower, isn't it? You know, this is my fault. I've done something wrong. It's because I'm not strong enough, or I haven't got enough willpower, or I didn't try hard enough, and then that leads into that like never-ending loop, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
So for those people who are kind of really struggling with the guilt and obviously lack of routine and all of that stuff going on in the emotional struggles, what are the kind of the main things that you're recommending, or is there any kind of tips that you could give people in those situations? So if we could start with maybe the lack of routine and kind of struggling with that.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's going to be about developing a new kind of structure to your day. And I mean, I use the word structure kind of loosely. Again, that idea that we're not good with uncertainty. So if, for example, someone is not working at the moment, they're at home and they're struggling with food, and they've got no idea what tomorrow is going to look like, that could be, you know, a recipe for sort of disaster food-wise and how they feel. So there's that, and I often say like, and I found it when I first became self-employed and working from home and having to structure my own time. I'd come from a highly structured job and environment. For me, it was just about getting my mornings in place first. So every morning I'd get up at the same time, and I'd do my yoga, and I'd have my coffee, and I'd just do these things in a certain order that just helps to start to create some sense of structure, some idea of loosely planning your day in a way that's going to support you, not in a way that's going to become tight or rigid.
Yeah.
And I think with the difficult feelings, I think we make our feelings worse by layering them. So that idea that we feel guilty about feeling guilty,
Yeah.
or even we feel sad about feeling sad. Like, these are difficult times. This is supposed to feel difficult. And whilst that's really uncomfortable and not always easy, I think sometimes when we feel uncomfortable, we think we have to get rid of this feeling. We have to change it. And that's where food sometimes comes in. It's this way of trying to change the way we feel. So the biggest one is, though things might feel quite bad right now, are you willing to just let yourself have your feelings? Because if you are, actually in the long run, and the other side of that, those feelings move through and they change and they come and go. You'll feel good and you'll feel bad. But quite often the stories that we tell ourselves about our feelings make us feel so much worse than we already do.
Yeah, definitely. And I always kind of think of feeling as like energy. And like you said, this energy can literally move and come in and go straight out the other side. And we can either feed it or we can let it go. And it's all to do with energy. And it's the same with the thoughts, right? All of these thoughts and feelings, they're just forms of energy. And we can make them worse by feeding them, or like exactly like you said, we can just learn to let them go.
Yeah. And finding names for your feelings as well that suit you. Because one that comes up a lot with eating, it's like they can't identify necessarily feeling anxious, happy, sad, whatever it might be. They feel, often the kind of word that comes up is agitated or bored. There's this restlessness, this sort of itchiness, this discomfort, whatever it might be, that doesn't seem to have a satisfying name that works for everyone. But it's like, what is that feeling to you? So that when you feel it, you can name it. Because sometimes the big feelings, like we know what we're feeling when we're feeling something big. But when it's something more like that, it's really hard to kind of like understand it. And we think that that feeling just means we want food. But that feeling has become to mean that we want food. Unless you're actually restricting and hungry, then you might want food.
Yeah, it's just that association, isn't it? Like food equals a relief from boredom, stress, agitation, frustration, and that develops over time, right?
Yeah, exactly. We make these associations. So I've had it before, like where I'll suddenly have an urge to eat something that comes out of nowhere and it's sudden and it's strong. And whenever that happens, I'm like, oh, something else is going on. But sometimes, unless I stop and investigate, the only experience I can be aware of is wanting food.
Yeah. Yeah, in those instances, it can sometimes feel like you go off on autopilot. So you go into like some altered state. I have a lot of people say that, you know, when they get that urge, it happens so automatically that without the awareness, it just happens. And then, you know, you sit there and you're like, what have I done? And I didn't even know what I was doing.
Yeah, well, that's the compulsive element of it. Quite often one of the antidotes to something like binge eating is finding a way to stay present, because it's really hard to binge if you stay present. You might still overeat, you might still eat too much, but that intense binging, part of us has to switch off in order from our bodies, because like binging's subjective when it comes to amounts of food, but certainly for me, even objectively, I could have binged on an enormous amount of food that had I been present or in a different state, I don't think physically could have eaten that much.
Yeah, that's very true. And is there anything you would advise to help people stay present and help people kind of stay grounded in those moments?
I think that's the inner journey part of it. Because I don't know, for me, and I think I see it in other people as well, but for me, I spent years searching for the answer. Like, what did I need in order to recover from this? And that was helpful because I learned a lot of things that really did help me. But recovery didn't happen until I stopped searching and found a way to be with myself. And that is an individual journey. I can't tell anybody how to do that. That starts with asking yourself that question, because it's always the looking outside for something that's going to tell me how to fix this.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's just like society has bred us to constantly be looking, you know, in our external world for solutions or things to fix us or ways to make us feel better. You know, like diet culture is just like a prime example, isn't it? Of us feeling like we need something to change. And exactly like you said, like, you know, you have everything you need inside you, but people don't trust themselves, do they? That's how I kind of see it.
Yeah. And we live in a consumer's world. So we have messages coming at us all the time since we were little, like, if this, then you'll feel good, then you'll arrive. And with binge eating, it's always like, if I no longer binged, I honestly thought, like, if I could beat binge eating, I could conquer the world. If I can do this, like, life will be easy.
Yeah.
And it's just extraordinary how it's not necessary. It doesn't necessarily work out like that.
Yeah, I know, I'm the same. I kind of thought like, once I get past this, I can do anything. But then you find out you're against the next struggle and the next thing that happens and the next thing that happens. So it's like really important to kind of build those internal resources, isn't it? And like you said, stop and actually look inside and what's going on as a way of just being able to deal with life. Because like, you know, eating's as a result of something, some challenge or whatever you're facing that's going on in your life. And that's just how you're coping, right?
Mm-hmm. And life's only happening now.
Yeah.
There's always this, there's often this very attractive idea that life is going to begin when. And actually, if life is happening now and this is all it is, that might be part of the agitation, kind of, for some people.
Yeah, we're trained to go either future mode or like dwell in the past, aren't we? Like you said, we're never really present. That's a really important thing.
Yeah, that's where life's happening. It's only happening now. And I've forgotten her name now, it's gone right out of my head, but there was that nurse who wrote a blog post that got like millions of reads, and she turned it into a book with 5 Regrets of the Dying. Bronnie Ware, her name is. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I have in the past.
Yeah. So like, and it's really interesting when you look at the people who at the end of their life are like reflecting back on what they wish they'd done differently. Like one of them is like, I wish I'd allowed myself to be happier. And that was really interesting. We postpone happiness all the time, when actually happiness is a state, not a destination. It's about, it's a state that we can do our best to access now with whatever we've got.
For sure. And that, yeah, like you said, that allowing, I think that comes into food a lot as well, is that permission piece, isn't it? And actually allowing yourself to either feel around food or actually, you know, the physical act of allowing yourself certain foods. That all plays a huge part of it. And I've seen that in my clients and people I've worked with, and I'm sure you have too.
Yeah. It's that whole thing, and then the weight thing comes in that, doesn't it? You know, I'll be happy when.
Yeah.
I can't be happy unless my body looks like this or feels like this, or all these things that we think that we need. We think we know what will make us happy, and I just think we're really bad judges of that. Or maybe there's a part of us that's never satisfied. So sometimes that agitation, I might describe it as a sense of dissatisfaction. And that's enormous, kind of around food, particularly for people who binge eat.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, you're chasing that carrot on a stick, aren't you? So you get there and then it's like, what's next? Oh, I've got to lose maybe another kilogram, or maybe I've got to cut down on this, or, you know, I've got to do extra running this week. You know, it's always like the next thing. And again, it's just out of the present moment.
Also, there seems to be this idea if we're not feeling good, that like somehow we're failing at life. Like that success means feeling great all the time. And if social media doesn't help with that, because you don't see really a balanced view of life on social media, you see the highlights. So a lot of people think if they feel bad, something's terribly wrong. But I think we're supposed to feel bad. I think life's 50-50. I think you're supposed to feel crap half the time.
Yes.
I mean, maybe someone else's ratio is different, but...
Well, right, especially right now, you know, we can't expect to be feeling good or content or calm or relaxed all the time, you know, especially right now is going to be probably, like you said, maybe more than 50% for some people, which is just the reality.
Yeah, and we can find moments. There's still some things that are good in your life.
Yeah.
And it feels like when an eating disorder is the problem, it feels like everything's terrible. Everything's terrible. And we forget the little things that are good, because compared to the eating disorder, they seem inconsequential. And they're not. The more we start looking for things in our lives that are good, the more things that we'll find, and the better we'll feel.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's how you basically cultivate, you know, this positive mindset, isn't it? It's like the little things of noticing consistently over time, and that's a process in itself. And I think a lot of people just want quick fixes. You know, I just want to get rid of my problems with food, I just want to feel better, I want to just get rid of this feeling. All of that is just completely kind of the wrong mindset, isn't it? This quick fix, you know, everything's a bit more of a process, which you need to give yourself permission to actually go through and experience.
I think it's tricky though, because when we start, like, so then people start realizing, oh, self-compassion helps. And as I heard you say it there, that's the wrong mindset. It's not about a right and wrong mindset. It's about, like, what's the mindset that's going to serve you? Because when you fall into that old mindset that's not helpful, you can then go down that path of beating yourself up. Like the idea of beating yourself up, that you keep beating yourself up. It's the layering again. So it's not even about good or bad. And like the gratitude practice stuff, I think it's great because it's powerful and it makes me feel good. I don't do it from this like moral obligation that I should feel grateful, that I think a lot of people do. It's for you, it's not for anyone else. There's no moral obligation to have your mindset a certain way or to view life a certain way. It's just always asking that question, you know, what's serving me? What makes me feel best?
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, everyone's different, aren't they? Everyone's unique and everyone has their own opinions, own ways of doing things. So it's around food, around life, everything, isn't it? Everyone's unique. And I think a lot, yeah, like you said, a lot of these approaches and concepts are generalized, but they're not for everyone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's a big thing to be said about choice as well. You know, that we have choice and we have autonomy, and people become so fixed that what helped them will help someone else.
Yeah.
Like the non-diet approach and all this, that, other, and diet, but like everybody's got this stance and then they nail their flags to their masts and they say, this is what you need to recover. And I find that quite unhelpful. Like, yes, I have opinions about what I think helps people to recover, but each person is going to need something different, or be able to, even something like intuitive eating can become a dogma when you start treating this as rules. And sometimes in the intuitive eating support groups, I see the way people are talking to each other and like getting angry with someone for saying, should I try the intermittent fasting or whatever it might be? And I'm just like, the subtlety's gone. Because we get a bit attached to our opinions and our points of view.
Yes, I think especially around food and weight, it's, you know, a very tricky subject sometimes, isn't it? And can create a lot of, you know, unsettledness and unrest in certain people. But like you said, you just got to go by what feels good for you at the end of the day.
And to kind of illustrate my point, a couple of days ago, I had a DM from someone asking whether they should stop counting calories to recover. And one, I can't give personalized advice out as a therapist.
Yeah.
I just made some very general remarks about like calorie counting and this, that, other. And they responded with, yes, you're right. Calorie counting is totally against recovery, which was not what I said at all. And I said and then I replied and said, it's not about whether you calorie count or not. I think as you ask yourself the question, does calorie counting bring you peace and freedom around food?
Yeah.
And she was like, well, no, it doesn't. Like, great. And I think for the majority of people, it does not. But maybe there's some people out there where it does, where the anxiety is so high that feels more peaceful for them and helps them to regulate better. Or maybe someone who has some leptin issues or some kind of like hormonal or physiological issues that makes it harder to regulate their appetite. But if you were to say that in an intuitive eating forum, that potentially for some people calorie counting might be helpful, you're going to get a lot of pushback. It's the intention. I think the intention behind what we do is the most important thing, more so than what we do.
Yeah, I definitely think that. And you get people ask you about, oh yeah, should I, count my calories? Should I track what I'm eating? And, like I always say, I'm like, where's it coming from? What's the intent behind it? If it's coming from a place of like choice and decisiveness and feeling good and feeling at peace with your body, then why would you say no to that?
Yeah, exactly.
And again, it's this choice aspect.
Yeah. And we project onto each other all the time, sort of from our own stories and our own experience.
Yeah, for sure.
I did that post with someone who was just really frustrated because they were gaining a lot of weight with the permission to eat part of intuitive eating. And she was having all these sort of skinny Instagram influencers saying, no, keep going, your body will tell you when to stop. And I think for the majority of people it does, but you don't know with this person, you don't know what's going on in their body. The appetite is such a complex mechanism that it is possible for it to go wrong, and for intuitive eating on its own not to be able to re-regulate you. But on the whole, I am a fan of intuitive eating. It's my story. It helped me, but I just try and be more nuanced. That's probably my therapist training. Try and be more nuanced in how I approach other people, people's recovery.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm exactly the same. The way I trained was not, no generalized approaches. It was like, this is the individual, and find out how they do their binge eating, restricting, anxiety, whatever that is for them. It's like finding out how they do it and applying the approach or the solution to that, rather than kind of the other way around, which I think a lot of approaches are like that. It's kind of, you know, person to label rather than actually finding out about the person and the problem and what's actually going on for them.
Yeah. And what really pisses me off is some practitioners out there who sell these programs where they guarantee that you'll be binge free in 30 days. There's a few of them I've seen, and the over promising that they're making, I think it's damaging, because people will go and do that, and if they don't manage to recover in the 30 days, there's a really good chance they're going to blame themselves for that. It just makes me mad. I'm all for the programs. I think the programs can be great. Do a 30-day program. There's a lot potentially that you could learn within that. But it's the marketing side of things that can just really get under my skin at times.
Yeah, for sure. And with what you're doing right now, your own practice, is there anything that you've got going on? Is there anything that you'd like to share? Any offers or support? Anything extra that you could offer people right now? It's always, like to ask whether there's anything that you've got that could potentially help.
Sure. Well, I wrote a book.
I saw that. Congratulations.
And I can honestly say I look at that book and I really believe in every word that I wrote. And I simply wrote the book that I think I would have wanted to read when I was struggling. And so it was almost like writing it to my former self. And it's a big part of like how you can tap into yourself. There's a method in the book which is all about tapping into yourself and your inner wisdom to find your way, because I don't think that everybody needs therapy to recover. As I said before, like previously on Instagram, I didn't recover until after I left therapy. It's very easy to think if I had therapy, then I could get fixed or something like that. So I've got my book. I do have a private practice, and I do run therapy groups for binge eating, that is a bit more affordable than doing sort of the one-to-one work. And they're all online. Everything's online now. So it's exciting. It means I'm getting clients from all over the world in a way that I didn't before. So that's just made the work really, really interesting for me. And obviously, on my YouTube channel, I put a lot of stuff out there, and that's the binge eating therapist too.
Just want to say thank you so much. This has been really interesting, and I love how the topics just kind of go into different places, which, it was really good to have a kind of a big, broad conversation about lots of different things. So thank you so much. And I'm really sure that gave a lot of value to my audience, and hopefully your audience too, sharing their opinions. And hopefully we can stay connected, and hopefully speak again very soon.
Great. Okay, thank you, Hannah.
Thanks, Sarah. Right, thanks for tuning in. And like I said, any questions, please drop myself or Sarah a message, and we'll be happy to answer anything that you've got. But thank you to Sarah, and we'll be back next Sunday for our second guest. Thanks, Sarah. We'll speak again soon.
Thank you. Bye.